Are you ready to step into a night where every tick of the clock cuts another line into Fairmont Crest? Today, we reopen the darkest door of Beyond the Gates. Allison has just broken out, and the second round of the Chelsea abduction game kicks off with surgical decoys, false signals, and a spine-chilling ultimatum. With Bill forced to lay his keys on the table, Danny and Kat are racing a foe who is always half a step ahead, while a leather bracelet engraved flickers like the signature of a bigger puppeteer. In this video, we'll rewind the timeline that led to this moment, deconstruct each psychological trap Allison preloaded, and lay out the bleakest forecast, where trust collapses, alliances fracture, and salvation becomes a price no one can pay. If you live for twists that punch the air from your lungs, stay to the very end, because the instant the lights go out is when the truth starts speaking. This time, Allison may be even more dangerous than before. Can Chelsea survive this second ordeal? Between the clammy walls of an outlying prison, darkness doesn't fall from the night sky. It rises from the countdown echoing in Allison's mind. The woman who once made Fairmont Crest shudder with a chain of decoys, disguises, and anonymous lines strung together like a web. The past isn't just an indictment. It's the torch that illuminates her operating system. The better a target is protected, the more she engineers the guard to strip itself away in panic. Chelsea was first dragged into the spiral on a moonless night, led by a familiar sent down a service stairwell in a hotel, leaving on the cold stone a wrist tie so fine it would snap at the lightest tug. Since then, the thunk of an elevator stalling between floors has swollen into her waking nightmare. All the shards, a missing bracelet, a chalk-white triangle scrawled where no one should have been, a swapped access badge with Naomi's name, have drifted back together into a single, choking question. Why does everything go so unervingly smooth, as if someone is unlocking doors from the inside? That's why, in whispers, suspicion keeps circling Madison. Not because she struts in the open, but because each time disaster hits, a camera pane catches a passing wrist, leather band etched with like a cold signature closing a verdict. Allison's jailbreak didn't explode with bombs. It blinked with a 7-minute electrical glitch, just long enough for sirens to be swallowed by wind and rain, long enough for a coat to surface in the river as a planted relic to fool eyes trained to file. Events in tidy sequence. Vanessa is first to clock how spotless the scene is, how uniform the footprints are, and the lone text to Chelsea before the phone dies feels implausibly neat. Cold storage, Unit 12. Don't come alone. But Chelsea has forfeited the privilege of calm. The resurgence of memory makes people shed the safeguards that once saved them. Her schedule is quietly tweaked by a mistaken email inviting her to meet a sponsor at a new exhibition wing. Her security thinned by a twin lure. A refrigerated truck rolls out before dawn while a gray sedan, broadcasting bogus signals, loops the harbor. When the elevator shudders to a halt midshaft, the scent that haunts her floods in like living evidence. And Danny, the sharpest instinct in the room for counterfeit cries for help, receives a clipped, pitch-warped SOS she knows isn't Chelsea, and yet cold sweat slicks her spine. Inside that pre-programmed chaos, Kat pores over a maintenance map and spots a chalk triangle motif repeated 3 times on the warehouse concrete, the very cipher Allison used back when she ran errands for Craig. On a camera's glass, Jacob catches the ghost of a leather-banded wrist, a small detail that tolls like a bell. Allison isn't alone. They hit cold storage 12 and find a room staged to deceive. An audio box looping ragged breathing, Chelsea's necklace hooked on a steel rack like bait right beneath a live stream delayed 30 seconds. The search team splinters along coordinates, and that's when Allison circles back to the heart of Fairmont Crest, slipping into the gala's catering crew with a wig and the raptor eyes of someone who traced every exit weeks ago. The escort car moving Chelsea from the exhibit grinds to a stop behind 2 wooden crates. Flares hiss and flood the hood in red smoke. When the wind scours it away, the back seat is empty, and the quick-release tether is sliced clean as a professional's blade. The ultimatum hits next, a 12-hour countdown blasting across screens. Hand over the insurance file and a duplicate key to Bill's safe if Chelsea is to see dawn. Bill's fists knot around a choice brutal as brick. Face, fortune, and the public ledger on one side, a life, and fissures in civic trust that never knit, on the other. Haley arrives like a promise of rescue, but in a story shattered this many times, every offer is a cable waiting to snap. Naomi vanishes from her safe post and then reappears in a shaky clip from an old rail tunnel, hair cropped so like Chelsea's it scrambles everyone's bearings, strapped to a chair in front of a gas nozzle, turning any rescue into a sadist's either-or. Open Chelsea's door and the other room triggers. Free Naomi and the sensor pings Allison to yank the bait. While Danny tries to spoof the system with a voice recording and Kat hot swaps a breathing sensor to steal 90 seconds. A single long train horn funnels every clue toward a derelict lakeside chapel. Night slides down the water. In Allison's upraised photo, a black umbrella hides half a face as if confessing and mocking at once, warning that this game runs deeper than the hands that cinch the rope. When the chapel door yawns open, no one believes they're entering a place of reverence. Allison's set is an operating theater for fear. Metal pendants, heat cables, microphones trained on a single chair where Chelsea will sit and let the town witness her smallness through a merciless lens. The face beneath the umbrella in the reflection isn't the person many want to keep innocent. A whip pan is enough for the flare smoke, the freezer bite, the sour tang of panic sweat to braid into a pre-panic state for everyone inside. And as the countdown ticks lower, the wind sawing through the roof tiles sounds like a blade, carving up the final hope that this will close cleanly. The first act of the night doesn't end with the door shutting. It ends with the sensation of dropping through a trap, the soles of your feet blooming blood with every step backward. From the ruined chapel, Allison raises the stakes by feeding the public a string of fragments that each seem harmless alone. A handoff envelope in an underground garage, a midnight call with no name saved, a redacted statement that leaves 4 digits showing, then finally a blown-up reflection that drives into the mind like a knife tip. If the past is the torch, the present is the fuel. Every spark Allison strikes inflames suspicion around Madison and whether someone keeps cracking a door for her from the inside. Chelsea looks into the frame with eyes wide not from pleading but from the dawning realization that she's been herded onto a stage where the host never plans to end with a release. Every tick of that 30-second live stream delay turns rescue into an exercise in futility. The team is watching the past while the present has already moved, like trying to fight a shadow that slipped away before the punch landed. In the darkest, but most convincing projection, Allison's next arrow won't aim at flesh. It will aim at reputation, because reputation is the bloodstream of Fairmont Crest. She forces Bill to hand over the insurance file not only to barter for a life but to stamp his name onto dirty paperwork, making any retreat tantamount to admitting a weakness to his enemies. Haley pours clean fixes into his ear, but cleanliness here is a switchblade. Once drawn, there's no sliding it back. After the tunnel gas, Naomi wakes with a jackhammer heart and a vice at her sternum, as if her lungs still hold yesterday's smoke. She becomes the unwilling emblem of the cost of salvation by scheme. Danny, the last tether to logic, is shoved into using the voice dub to jam the feed, a move that might buy Chelsea a few breaths but could just as easily light the fuse on Allison's next rage, because cheating is Allison's favorite declaration of war. With under 2 hours left, Kat tracks a row of hidden marks around the chapel and presses a tiny electric lock buried behind rotten boards. For a flash, hope throws a spear of light down the tunnel. But it's Allison's final double bind. Touch the lock and the camera cuts. And in the adjacent room, a refreshed gas rig hisses to life where Naomi's being stabilized. The team is torn in two exactly as scripted, and at the center sits Chelsea, understanding that saving herself may shove someone else over the edge. This is the moment when everyone who believes in order has to admit the truth. They aren't fighting a lone inmate. They're up against an architect of fear, someone who warps every rule, turns goodness into leverage, and recasts solidarity as a fatal weakness to last. The name dragged out of the shadows isn't clean enough to be denied forever. Madison flickers through a burst of stills, handing an envelope, sliding past a pane, then pausing with that etched leather band centered like a seal. But even with a face on the suspect, victory doesn't arrive, because Allison chooses a different ending. She lets Chelsea live and leaves the town mute. She freezes the camera on the frame where Bill sets the duplicate key in a box, and then cuts the feed before anyone can see the door open. Somewhere else on the lake, a skiff pulls away bearing a hooded figure. And inside the box there isn't cash, but a USB loaded with emails and ledgers outlining a protection racket tied to someone who occupies a chair on the city council. When the drive opens, the pillars of moral order turn into headshots in a case file, and the immediate backlash is brutal. Public trust collapses onto the very people who just bled to save Chelsea, as if they were complicit in the stagecraft. Chelsea is escorted out of the chapel, but no one calls it a rescue. She walks past the press barricade in silence, a fine welt at her throat like a fishing line, and eyes that look at her closest allies through cracked glass. Vanessa tries to dam the media storm with a few lines, but in a place so addicted to polish, once the foundations are revealed as toxic, reassurance means nothing. Jacob and Kat argue without words over the question nobody wants to answer. When did they start letting the enemy in? Danny turns a phone over in her hands, the one holding the voice dub, knowing a tiny choice to buy time has become the pretext for a dirty interference label. Naomi sinks to the floor, palm on her chest, counting breaths just to prove she's still here. Bill, the man who set the key in the box, becomes the emblem of defeat. Crushed by coverage, by the unwritten laws of the hunters, and inside a house he thought he could lock down to end this grim arc, Allison doesn't need to keep Chelsea to win. She keeps something worse, an open-ended fear. She turns every evening into a ritual of checking locks, every elevator pause into a warning bell. She leaves traces as thin as chalk dust, just enough for people to fill the blanks with their worst imaginations. And if Madison truly is the architect behind her, the next steps won't be a manhunt. There'll be a sprint against a drip of leaks that could force Fairmont Crest to confront its own truth. Power here runs on handshake pacts, on moral lines that slide with convenience, on the readiness to sacrifice someone to keep a face clean. The rain along the lake burns off fast, but the damp chill lingers like a reminder that tragedies don't end when the lights go out. They end when everyone learns to live with the sense that they sold something they can't name. Which is why the darkest forecast is also the one most likely to come true. Chelsea no longer trusts herself on the street. Naomi carries a chemical memory in her lungs that jerks her awake nightly. Danny is scorched by the compulsion to control every wire but is now suspected as an interfering link. Kat and Jacob Fisher over the inside man question with no answer. Bill loses his footing and staggers into financial probes that grind down a man already out of strength. As for Allison or the hand with the band, there will be no vanishing. Only a half step back to draw another chalk mark on the curb, signaling the next loop of despair. In this world, salvation always collects a fee, and that fee has already been paid with pieces of the souls of people who thought they were the only victims. In truth, they're supporting players in a show where the editor of fear is the only star that never falls. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I make is just speculation and personal sharing. If you find the video interesting and useful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments section for everyone to discuss. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Sincerely, thank you.